Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about affirmative action hiring and race, gender quotas and that sort of thing, and the implications for the Western economy and the devastating drag effect it has on wealth creation in the West. And so this is a pet peeve of mine, and I've mentioned it previously, but just recently had meetings with people from an international trade team from a first world country, and I was taken aback, stunned, in fact, at how everybody was unqualified. There was nobody who was qualified to be there. There were some people who were very well connected, and there were, the race gender quotas. There was plenty of gay and lesbian people, and the people in the key roles were comprehensively unqualified, and so it was weird. And they would have had, the pay isn't sort of particularly good in these roles, but the benefits are massive. So you get say an above average salary, but all your food and accommodation and transport is paid for. And the income you earn is tax free because it's expat overseas income, that sort of thing. So so really it's a very good deal. They also they pay the school fees for your children to go to school and so on. So it's a pretty cozy gig, and one that would be a plum gig that people would climb over cut glass to get to, and so on. So they could have had some really high quality folks. And you sort of look at the people that are there and think, holy shit, it's almost like they've set out to hire the lowest quality people they can. But and that's always concerning when you see it. And another instance recently, a company that sort of we're doing business with, and they some meetings were delayed while they put somebody new in a position. And this has happened many times previously. I'm sort of almost lost count. It's like the normal now rather than an aberration, that you meet the person and it's some pink-haired lesbian or something. You go, wow, who isn't qualified? Why would you even hire this person? I mean, did they intend and set out to hire the least qualified person they possibly could find? It seems that way. Now, you've got to take a broader view of these things and say, well, all right, the person appears to be comprehensively unqualified, but maybe they've got a razor sharp intellect, for example. Maybe they're super industrious and conscientious. Maybe they've got some other redeeming feature that can compensate to some extent to what they're missing in terms of their expertise and their qualifications and so on. But no, this person's a moron as well, and very bitter and angry and so on. So very prickly and difficult to deal with. So it's hardly worth. It's a real struggle to deal with people like that, particularly when they're in any position of authority, and these people seem to find themselves in these positions very insecure and very defensive and chip on shoulder, and they shouldn't be given these jobs. There are plenty of qualified people out there who could have done this job. So it looks like they've purposefully gone and hired the least qualified person they could find. I mean, it may have been they wanted it was a quota of some sort that had to be met, but anyway. But something else caught my eye just recently, that and this is the rates of pay that are now paid to what I think are quite important and essential jobs, and the rates of pay that are paid to just ideological jobs that aren't needed, have never been needed, will never be needed, but they're forced on us by this globalist ideology that we're all required to go along with. So here's an investigator, an examiner and investigator for stock market fraud. Okay, so these are big time criminals rampaging through the stock market and breaking the law. So now this is a pretty technical job. I'm sure they've got software routines that run and kick up red lights and that sort of stuff. But they want a lot for this role. They want someone who's can forensically examine financial information and come up with a hey, there's fraud taking place here, and don't sell these big banks and so on short. They've got some various means of hiding their illicit activities and so on. So what do you think a job like this would pay? It's I mean, it's going to would need to be, you'd think, somebody quite bright, well qualified and experienced, but it pays $70,000 a year, and this is for investigating, identifying fraud in the stock market. So $70,000 a year. I think that's an important job. Maybe it isn't, but I think it is. I mean, that fraud at that level can sort of rip off millions of people, and so it needs. I think it needs to be some pretty high powered dudes in there. But here's now another job for it's for an NGO, and it's a propagandist to go online, stay online on the internet and pump out propaganda stories about victims in society. So you have to invent a sort of a victim narrative and go out there and pump these narratives, get people to buy into it, and then and so on. So it's a paid propagandist for the NGOs, or an NGO. Now that pays $110,000 a year, and you can work from home. So that's paying $40,000 more than someone who's investigating stock market fraud. Now, let's have a look at another job here. Here's a diversity officer, or diversity and inclusion officer, and also another one that I haven't seen before, diversity, inclusion and belonging. I don't even know what the fuck belonging means, but now that pays $150,000 a year, so more than double the stock market fraud investigator. Let's look at a director of diversity for an educational institution. Pays $340,000 a year, plus many other benefits, travel and the like. Now I could go on here, but an engineer in charge of building 20 miles of road plus a bridge, so it's a major project, is paid slightly over half what the diversity director is paid. Now, the diversity director is doing nothing. I mean, it's a purely ideological parasite job, where they drain money away from the economy to produce nothing of value in return. So now the globalists may see it differently. They want to push as many black and brown peasants into the West as they can, and the director of diversity would be an assister and an enabler for that ideological sort of program to move along. So in that sense, it's giving value to the globalist project, but it's not producing anything of commercial value to anybody. It's just a drag on the economy and a drag on everything. So, but that diversity director is paid nearly double what the engineer, this very important engineer, is being paid to run a $1 billion project. Now here's another one. Here's a project. It's like a transport, road, rail, integrated project, and it's about $3.5 billion with a B dollars. And the guy, or the job for executive sort of commercial director for that project, or that construction, I suppose you call it, is paid again just slightly above half what the diversity director is paid. So you can just see how out of alignment things are. Ideology has just destroyed the concept of value and the concept of productivity, the concept of commercial return, and so on. It's quite astonishing how far it's going. I hadn't realised how the extent, and I looked at it before, so I've seen the trend, but I hadn't realised as I started to go through it and look, it's what, $110,000 for an NGO propagandist, whereas a civil engineer building a bridge with 5 years' experience is paid less than that. So any productive job, that there's an absolute frantic effort by Western governments to create as much competition in the workforce for productive jobs. They want to bring out as many pro-Indian programmers as possible to drive down, even though these are productive and vital functions. But it's much different when they're looking at lawyers and diversity officers and diversity directors and NGO propagandists and these sorts of things. And also the army, the phalanx of lawyers who are there to provide free legal services to illegal aliens, to Black Lives Matter arsonists and so on. These are typically, they're not doing it pro bono. They're being paid by the NGOs to do this and do this work. So this is why there is so much legal representation for the people who are actively destroying Western society. They all get free legal representation. You want to try and stop them, then you have to dip your hand in your own pocket to go to court. So that's also an issue there. But the extent of this, it's a massive fraud being inflicted on the Western world. The extent of it is mind-boggling when you think of some angry lesbian propagandist, sitting in lounges getting paid $110,000 to, whereas the guy investigating stock market fraud by the big banks and so on gets paid $70,000. I mean, it's unbelievable, but it's now so widespread that it's not a surprise. And I've mentioned a number of times before, you look at the best paying jobs in the Australian economy, then the number of government and NGO jobs, the best paid jobs now are government and NGOs, not the private sector. The private sector has maybe 15% of the best paid jobs in the country. The rest are all government and NGOs and quangos and so on. That's how the balance has shifted over the last 20 to 25 years. 25 years ago, it was nearly all private sector jobs that were the best paid. I mean, but since globalization has began in earnest, really pushing that project, it's completely flipped and reversed. And such is an example of the effect, the destructive effect of globalization on the Western world. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.